McLaughlin with BlueSky Hypnosis. Today is Friday Live at 5. Today we're going to be talking about past life regression, titled it Past Life Regression Explained. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the comments section, because that's what makes this interesting. It doesn't even have to be comments. It doesn't just have to be questions. It can also be comments as well. All of your feedback is appreciated. I will get to as many of the questions as I can. What's next? Oh, standard disclaimer. I'm not a psychologist. I am not a doctor. If you have important physical, psychological, emotional issues, go see your licensed professional for sure. Having said that, I also work with people one-on-one all over the world through Zoom. So if there are things that you think I might be able to help you with, please feel free to reach out to me as well. But again, if it's an emergency or something like that, you want your licensed professional, obviously. So today we're talking about past life regression explained. I guess where we would start with is probably what is past life regression. So the idea of a past lifetime is kind of built around the concept of reincarnation. In the West, our culture doesn't really accept this idea, but there are many cultures around the world that do accept this idea. And there's even some evidence to suggest that early Christians believed in reincarnation. That's the idea that the sort of the souls or the spirits are, sometimes people say recycled. That sounds a little prosaic. They come back. So there's two parts to you. There's a soul or a spirit, and there's a physical body. And when your physical body dies, the body kind of goes away and it does its thing. It decomposes like everything else physical, and your spirit goes on. You could say it goes to heaven, it goes to the light, it goes to the afterlife, goes to Valhalla, goes to Eden, a million other names. And then it can choose to come back to this planet and incarnate with the body of a fetus or a baby, and bring with it experiences that you've had in other lifetimes. So I think all parents of more than one child notice that even though the children are born into the same family, with the same genetics, with the same food, with the same, maybe even the same house that they're raised in, they generally have decidedly different aspects to their personalities. There's things that frighten one that don't frighten the other ones. There are things that this one is good at, that this one isn't good at, but that one is good at something else entirely. And the idea is that we bring with us a memory of previous lifetimes. Now, for most adults, we can't remember anything about previous lifetimes, but I can't tell you how many people who've had children have told me that when their child was 3 years old, when their child was 4 years old, they described other lifetimes. Or other aspects, like they might have described, their grandfather who died before they were born. And this tends to really freak out the parents because they don't understand this. But the idea is that this soul of this child really did live in another lifetime, and that when they're little and they haven't learned that this isn't supposed to be possible, they're able to recount these things. Much in the same way as you and I can often recount a dream that we had last night in the first couple of minutes after we wake up. But that after we put our foot on the floor, after we brush our teeth, after we get dressed, after we start our day, it's all gone. And when I say gone, I mean gone from conscious awareness, not gone from your awareness entirely. So there have been plenty of cases where a client has told me, because dream work is a big part of what I do with my clients. Oh, I had this really amazing dream last night. I remember waking up crying, but I can't remember any of the details. And in hypnosis, they're able to go back into the dream and remember the dream, because the dream just is not, when we say we've forgotten it, it's just not accessible to our conscious mind. It's still in our subconscious. And in much the same way, past lifetimes are still available to you. They're just not available to you consciously. And there's something about going into hypnosis that unlocks that and makes this all accessible to you again. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, that I put on my list of sort of questions to kind of prime the pump, if you will, or things that we would talk about, excuse me, is why time is and of itself an illusion. So those of you who have looked into quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and I can't say I'm an expert in that at all, but in quantum physics, they say there is no such thing as time. That time is an artifact, or maybe even an illusion, created by living on a planet that's rotating on its own axis, and it's also simultaneously rotating around the sun. So rotating on its own axis gives us day and night. That's one of the ways that we judge time. Going around the sun gives us the experience of seasons, which is also how we judge time. But just outside of that mechanism, like standing out in space someplace, there is no time. So quantum physics is basically saying everything is happening simultaneously, which is still a hard concept for me to grasp. But I do more and more kind of appreciate this, which also sort of, if you accept that what quantum physicists say, which is that there's no time, it helps us understand that if we, in quotation marks, go into the past, which according to them is happening right now, and we resolve something in the past, it would affect us in the present moment. So I don't know if that makes perfect sense, but put something in the comment section if you want me to elaborate on that further, if I can. The other thing that I kind of conceived of a while ago is that this concept of time is almost like a high-rise building. So if you had a 20-story high building and you have an elevator that can take you from the ground floor all the way up to the 20th floor, that the elevator is kind of like doing a regression, a past life regression. It allows you to move between these different floors, because let's say that you and I are on the 7th floor. We have a physical awareness, sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, of everything that's going on in that floor, right? We can connect with all of those things and say, because I can sense these things with my 5 senses, I know this to be real. We can also say, I know there's 19 more floors in this building, and I accept that people are living their lives on those 19 floors, but my senses can't verify that for me. My reality is the 7th floor. But if I get into the elevator, like doing hypnosis, past life regression, there are other ways of doing this too, like a dream at night, meditation. Psychedelics is now a pretty widely studied field where people can presumably go into past lifetimes. Excuse me. Then that's my mechanism, the elevator, to go to these different floors. So you and I could get on the elevator at the 7th floor and we could go up to the 18th floor, and now that's our reality. Does this make sense? So we can visit different time periods through the elevator, the mechanism of hypnosis and hypnotic regression. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's see who is here. Miriam is here. She says, "Hi, Peter. Past life regression with you was life-changing for me. And this is me coming from a stage where I did not even believe in past life regression was possible." Well, that is super cool, Miriam. I am so happy. I'm so happy you're here. And I'm so happy that you shared this with us. If you want to talk about, if you feel like you want to talk about how it was life-changing for you, please feel free. And obviously, if you don't want to, no pressure. But, everyone I'm sure is curious now about how it was life-changing. And if you feel like sharing that, awesome. And thank you for making the comment. That's really sweet. And it's good to see you. Penny Craig, hello, Peter. Hello, everyone. Hello to you too. Sarah W. is here. SJ is here. Heather Marney, good to see you, Heather. Welcome back, as well as you, Raquel Figueroa. And Miriam says, I now finally understand my present life. So she's saying, I think, that because of doing the past life exploration that we did, she now has these deep insights into her present life. And presumably those deep insights into her present life is helping her in a variety of ways in the present. And this is really kind of the essence or one of the most important factors in doing past life regression. So the main reason that I do this with clients is to get to the root cause of whatever the symptoms are they're dealing with in this lifetime. I've had clients that have had like migraine headaches, And in this one case, someone went back to a past lifetime where they shot themselves in the head. They committed suicide. And so to resolve the headaches, to resolve the migraines, we had to resolve this wound. And I'm not talking about the physical wound as much as I'm talking about the psycho-emotional wound of taking their own life in a past lifetime. In another lifetime, these are just the ones that are sort of coming to me now. There was a woman who her village was raided by what seemed to be Vikings, and it was raining, and it was overcast, and everybody was screaming and running away, and she was trying to run away, and she had on this heavy woolen cloak that got very, very heavy because of the rain, and she was climbing up some rocks, and one of the attackers grabbed her leg or something and hit her over the head and killed her. And for her, that was the cause of her migraines. And when we resolved this, the migraines just slowly started to disappear and go away, which is really remarkable. Obviously, based on what Miriam is saying, the other major benefit is understanding yourself better. And this is one of the most remarkable aspects of doing past life regression, is that when you take someone into a past life, the specifics of that past lifetime, the circumstances of that past lifetime, match up perfectly with what they're dealing with now. And sometimes it's not even right away. It's as that past life unfolds, these threads start to come together to match up perfectly with what they're dealing with now, which is absolutely phenomenal to me and remarkable. 16 years later, that, I don't know, 1,000 people, I don't even know if you count the people on my YouTube channel, because I have past life regression videos on my YouTube channel where you can go try this out for yourself. Subscribe if you haven't. BlueSky Hypnosis. People will write and talk about, oh my God, this was amazing. So it's got to be in the multiple thousands of people that I've heard from, not including the ones that don't put a comment, about their experience. So it's absolutely astonishing that person after person after person after person has the ability to go into a past life, that it lines up with their present life, and that many of them can find this amazing transformation like Miriam is talking about in their present lifetimes. Okay, let's see what else is here, what else people are saying. Raquel Figueroa says, I can remember most of my dreams and they seem so real. Some of my dreams also do happen, which in my teen years, there was a time that I didn't even want to sleep, afraid to dream. Okay, so that would suggest to me that there's some kind of trauma in your past, could be earlier in this life, could be a past lifetime, that your subconscious mind is trying to keep suppressed. It's trying to keep it from coming into your conscious awareness because it's disturbing. It doesn't want to upset you. But the problem with this is it's like trying to keep something toxic inside of your body. It's going to have its influence on you. You couldn't just keep something, like a bullet in your body without expecting that wasn't going to affect your body in certain ways, through infection or through some other mechanism. And so in the same way, I believe that we want to excise, we want to get anything emotionally toxic out of your body. And the analogy that I probably overuse is like having a splinter in your toe. Everyone knows that the only reasonable solution to this is to get a needle, sterilize it, dig it out of your toe, and then disinfect the toe once the splinter is out. Does that hurt? Yeah, it hurts. It hurts more than leaving the splinter in your toe. But once the splinter is out, it's amazing relief, and then the underlying wound can heal. Now, this is opposed to letting it just fester, getting worse, or walking around on crutches, or drinking alcohol to excess all the time to numb the pain, or taking some kind of drug. Getting that splinter in your mind out, in my opinion, is always the way to go, and not to allow it to be suppressed or repressed, because that will always have some kind of negative secondary or tertiary effects. All right. Estelle, hello to you too. Good to see you. I'm the Soul says, hi, all your live events are amazing and unique. Well, thank you so much for that. That is super, super kind of you. Appreciate that. I'm glad you're here. Sydney Morales is here. Good to see you. I'm the Soul says, hope you do a series of dream interpretation or correlation to a past life. Yeah, and I'd love to know what you guys think about this, but I would love to do a live where people bring dreams to me, and when we kind of go through this and just see what happens. So one of the things that I've learned to do over the years is to come up with the themes of a dream. So, when the dream is first presented, it's like, oh my God, this is like somebody just took a spaghetti and threw it against the wall. It doesn't make any sense. But as you kind of break it down into its themes, it all of a sudden starts to take on more meaning. And the person, if I don't know the person, can often recognize those themes and how it relates to their present life, even if at first blush it made no sense. And if I know the person, sometimes I can see how it relates to their lifetime. But I'm thinking about doing that. Would love to hear what you guys think. So thank you, I'm the Soul, for saying that. Estelle, if my past life self or my subconscious has accepted that it's not safe to speak her truth and stand up for herself out of fear that she'll be punished, how do I convince her that it's safe? Also, why doesn't my past life self realize that this event is over, and why is she still stuck living there? Oh, I love this one. This is awesome. I got to give a triangle for that one. So just a few minutes ago, I was talking about, and let me get this, clear this out of here. There we go. Just a few minutes ago, I was talking about quantum physics and how in quantum physics, they say there is no time. So how, if that's true, if what quantum physicists tell us, if what science, the current cutting edge science, that's correct, that there's no time, then how would your past life soul know that that's over? Because in that sense, it wouldn't be over. So the other part of the question was, how do I convince her that it's safe to speak up? Okay. So in all cases, in my opinion, we want to go back to the moment at which she decided that it wasn't safe for her to speak up, right? It's not enough for us to know that she feels it's unsafe to speak up and that's been passed along to you. We need to know the precise moment at which she took on this belief. So it could be that, she lived in Elizabethan England and she cheated on her husband, or she was accused of cheating on her husband, or she was accused of sedition against the king. And she was sentenced to death. And she was led up onto, what looks like a stage and the chopping block, and somebody chopped off her head. And before her head was chopped off, she just thought, I shouldn't have said anything. I should have kept my mouth shut. And she almost made like a vow to herself never to say anything again. If that were the case, we would want to heal that moment at which she was executed. Or we might want to heal the moment at which she spoke up. And the healing in that case involves other people, right? Because she didn't sentence herself to death. She didn't execute herself. Other people did. And oftentimes, in a different realm, when a person goes from the physical realm into the quantum field, they have a greater awareness. And now they're willing to atone for what they did. And it's very possible that whoever harmed her is willing to apologize for what they did. That could be enough to help her release that fear of speaking up. It could be that we have to kind of heal the wound that she suffered. She no longer has a physical body, but there could still be an energetic wound. It could be that we'd almost have to redo the scene where she's speaking up and have her do it in a different way, where she can confide in someone. She still gets to speak up, but she doesn't necessarily speak up in a way that leads to her death. The bottom line is that it's all dependent upon the particulars, the specifics of her story, and what her specific fear is and how she ticks and how she operates. And it may be that that she can then coach you in how to use your voice in a way that allows you to speak up without endangering yourself. So for you, endangering yourself could be getting deplatformed on social media. It could be losing your job. It could be losing a friend. And once she's healed, she might be able to help coach you in how to do this in a way that preserves the things that are important for you to preserve while not having to suppress what's important for you to discuss and talk about. Hopefully that makes sense. I know I was rambling a little bit there. Miriam says, I'm very excited what the stars will tell me tomorrow when watching the shooting stars of the Perseids meteor shower. That seems very cool. So Raquel Figueroa says, I'm the soul. I second that. That's super cool. And Tammy Lee, Peter, hi, I love this topic. Well, that's great, Tammy Lee, because I love it too. And it's great that we can all get together and share it together. Michelle Rodriguez, hi, doing past life regression gave me an insight on some of my current life fears. Yeah, this is what I was saying before. This is perfect, Michelle, that if we have lived multiple lifetimes, then right now, understanding your present life is just kind of like a little snapshot. And if you were to take one frame out of a 2-hour movie, or even you were to take 1 minute of frames out of a 2-hour movie, the meaning of the movie might be totally distorted from what it really is. Like if you were to look at a famous painting like the Mona Lisa, but you could only see a section of it, like 15% of it. You might think it was something entirely different, or the meaning of it would be lost to you. And it's not your fault, it's just because you're operating on limited information. So as Michelle is saying, as Miriam was saying, being able to go into your past lifetime really helps you to understand your present lifetime greater, what your fears are, like Michelle was saying, what your motivations are, why you're good at certain things, why you're kind of repulsed by certain things. All of this can take on a much greater understanding. So yeah, thank you for that. Really appreciate you sharing that with us, Michelle. Michelle also goes on to say, how does generational memories figure into past life regression? That's a really great question. As I've mentioned on this channel before, there is science that shows that you can transfer a trauma, from a mouse down through the child mouse, down through to a grandchild mouse. So if trauma can be passed somehow through the genetic line, then presumably it can be done with human beings as well. And the bottom line is, I don't really know here. I don't know the answer to this. And maybe the answer is multifaceted. I have a client I'm working with right now who is the reincarnation of his grandfather who died before he was born. So is that how it passes through? Well, in some cases, perhaps. In other cases, is it just somehow through the DNA? Like how energetically is that passed through? Nobody really knows for sure. But I do think that generational trauma is something that is important to look at if you're dealing with your own significant kind of trauma. I've had a number of clients who have gone back to previous lifetimes where they were in the camps in World War II. And I also believe that we're all connected to each other, and that when one person heals, it creates healing for the other people that were connected to that event. And also it creates healing on that generational line, going what we would call back and what we would call going forward. So great question. All right. Here is Miriam again. The past life that appeared to me when we were working together was connecting me with present soulmates and all the issues we are working through. Okay, so that's cool. Miriam is talking about how when we were working together, the past lifetime we went into shed tremendous light on a present relationship with someone. And that light that was shed on it actually influenced the present relationship. I hope I'm not going too far with this. I'm trying to go at the pace that you're revealing this and honoring, obviously your right to privacy. But bottom line is, Miriam is saying that that the past lifetime helped to improve the present lifetime relationship. And I've seen this many, many times myself, because again, we're often operating on just a subset of the information. So I'm not saying this happened in Miriam's case, but if, for example, you had a relationship where you felt like you were wronged by someone, and you discovered that in a past lifetime, you wronged them in the same way or in an even more significant way, and let's just say for the sake of argument, they forgave you for it. Wouldn't that change how you interact with this person now because all this new information was added in? I mean, it's almost like watching a courtroom drama, and the person who looks like they're guilty, all of a sudden, a witness comes out of the woodwork and offers this evidence, this exculpatory evidence that proves beyond a shadow of doubt that they're actually innocent, when you thought a minute ago, based on the information you had, that they were guilty. This is one of the most remarkable things that doing past life regression can bring to your present life, specifically in the case of what Miriam is talking about with your relationships. So thanks, Miriam, for filling us in. Heather Marney. Hello, Heather. If we have had past lives, maybe a few times, how do we know how many we will have in the future? And how do we know when we have learned what we have to learn? And then she has another thing here. Do we assume we will not have another future life? Okay, so I'm going to go back to this. How do we know when we have learned what we have to learn? Okay, so I guess the first thing I would say is, I don't think we necessarily know how many more lifetimes on this planet we're going to have. Because again, it's almost like we can wash away from a spiritual perspective the concept of time. If we go back to that concept of quantum physics, that there is no time, then it doesn't matter how many lifetimes we have. I know it's kind of hard, because we come here, we experience time, we struggle, we suffer, we die, we joy, pain, all that stuff. It has more to do with learning a lesson. And in my experience with working with clients, when I have a client go into the life between lives, they meet with their spirit guide. We ask, what lesson did you come here to learn? And let's say it's forgiveness. And then I ask, okay, so ask them how many lifetimes you've been working on that one lesson. The most uncommon answer is 1. Much more common is like 3. They've been working on the lesson of forgiveness for 3 lifetimes. Less common, but it does happen, is 9 lifetimes, 20 lifetimes. When you encounter a person who's been working on the same lesson for, say, more than 5 lifetimes, you know for a fact that you are working with a person who is extremely stubborn. And this is always true. Always true. So if I then say to this person, after hypnosis, so it seems like you're a really stubborn person, they always laugh and they're like, yeah, people call me stubborn. Because that prevents us from learning the lessons. And there's no punishment for taking 9 lifetimes to learn something. And I don't know that there's like you get a certain kind of medal or something for doing it in 2 lifetimes. But in general, it takes a couple of lifetimes to learn a lesson. Now, these are usually very significant lessons. It's not like tying your shoes. Like learning forgiveness or learning love or learning courage are very big, powerful lessons. So the number of lifetimes that we live have more to do with learning the lessons. And we sign up for these lifetimes. No one forces us to step into the lifetime that we're in right now, which is another very empowering concept, because if we chose this on some level, then we must have everything we need to accomplish our mission, right? That there must be a bigger part to this story of why I would choose to do this. So so we don't know if we're going to be living future lifetimes, but I think we can all assume we are, because if you're not coming back here for another lifetime, it means that you're probably pretty close to, I don't know what the right word is, enlightened. a psychological term would be self-actualized or what have you. But we're all on our path trying to find our way back home, is what I think it is, by learning these lessons. And it could take us multiple lifetimes in order to do that. And there's no shame in this. The other part of your question was, do we assume we will not have another future life? No. I think we assume we will have future lifetimes. That's my experience working with clients. So thank you for asking. Let's see. Tracy Maysmith. Hello, Tracy. Hello. I love that PLR helps the understanding of oneself. Absolutely, Tracy. I do too. And sounds like you may be practicing that in the near future. So Tammy Lee said she likes the idea of a dream show. That's the bringing your dreams here, and then we analyze them together and see if we can figure out the meanings of those dreams. Penny Craig says, this seems crucial for any kind of personal development or just managing your human. I feel sad it's so fringe. I don't know anyone talking about this. My family freaked out about me doing it. Yeah, that's. So grateful I found this channel in you, Peter. So grateful you're here. As soon as I'm able, I'm going to book a package of your sessions for past life regression and entity attachment. I can't wait. Well, I can't wait either, Penny. We'll look forward to that. But yeah, it is strange. If we had lived, I guess, in ancient Rome or in ancient Greece, we would have thought differently about so many things. About the concept of God. Like this multiple different gods, and that they have their strengths and they have weaknesses and they have petty differences and they bicker with each other and so forth. We would have thought differently about the earth. We would have thought differently about what the meaning of a citizen, a Roman citizen versus a non-Roman. They all, my understanding is that in Roman society, they didn't have the shame that we have about being naked, that they would, poop together. They'd have these, toilets set up, lined up next to each other out in the middle of a plaza or something. I mean, we find this like, horrifying, but for them, it was totally normal. And so there are cultures right now that think that reincarnation is the most normal thing in the world. And for us, it's this, shattering idea. And yet, even some of our greatest thinkers have believed that there were past lifetimes. So most things recycle. Things don't usually just go away, never to return. They usually, go back into the soil and it's recycled and it turns into something else. If it's not, is it called a perennial, right? It's not an annual, it's a perennial. The perennial flower just recycles itself. It looks like it's dead, it looks like it's gone, and then it comes back. The seasons. In winter, it looks like the earth has died. And then, lo and behold, here comes spring and everything is coming back again. And I think that the whole concept of reincarnation, to me, makes so much sense, as I said before, about us on a much larger journey. Why we can be so different from our siblings. Why you can have a 3-year-old, concert pianist, a virtuoso at 3 or 4 years old. They obviously brought something in with them. That's how I see this. So I couldn't agree with you more. Sydney Morales. Sydney says, I've spoken with you before about looking for answers about my connection with my mom. I've gained clarity from other past lives I've had, but when I've tried to seek answers about my mom, I am blocked. Okay. And then she says, I wonder why. So think about, and Sydney, I don't know if you're a parent. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But when you're a parent, I think one of the challenges, one of the aspects of being a parent that's an art is knowing when to intervene and to what extent to intervene in what's happening with your child. Now, obviously, at the extremes, we know that we want to intervene when they're about to hurt themselves grievously. But let's take a child riding a bicycle for the first time. Let's say the child is, 5 years old. and they're riding on a bicycle, and they're, the training wheels are off, and they're tippy, 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 tippy. You could rush up there so that they don't fall off. But if you do that, you don't really give them that experience of what it's like to fall off the bike, because even that has a kind of learning to it, right? One of the philosophies that my wife and I have had since our kids were little is that if they fall when they're climbing a tree from 2.5 feet, it might prevent them from falling from 20.5 feet when they're 12 years old and you're not watching. If they fall off a bicycle and skin their knee when they're 5 years old, it might mean that when they're driving a car, driving a motorcycle when they're 30 years old, they're just a little bit more cautious, because there's something to learn in everything. And the art, I think, of a parent is to know, as I said before, when to intervene and to what extent. So I think it's the same with our spiritual guidance. That if everything were done for us, then it would retard our development as souls. And sometimes to show you something, it could be deemed that would disrupt your growth. Now, when I run into this kind of block, when I'm working one-on-one with clients, what it generally means is that, well, let me rephrase this. When I run into that kind of block, I have the client ask their spirit guide, before I can meet with my mom, or before I can go into a past lifetime with the person who's my mom in this lifetime, is there something else you want me to learn or experience first? I'm going to say 100% of the time, the answer to that question is yes. When you go and have that experience, because it may be going into a different past lifetime, it may be going into an experience from earlier in this lifetime, or there's some kind of learning that the guide brings you to. That could be the life between lives, it could be the Akashic record, and so on. When you've had that experience, then you go back to the guide and say, now that I had that experience, now will you allow me to go into the past lifetime that I lived with the person who's my mom in this lifetime? Almost always it's a yes. So it's almost like before we're going to let you hold this loaded gun in your hands, we want you to take a gun safety class first. And then when you have the gun safety class and you produce the certificate, they're like, okay, now you can hold the gun here at the gun range. Does that make sense? So I'm fairly confident that you can get past this block if you go, and you could do a track where you meet your spirit guide and then do a past life. In your mind, ask the guide, is there some experience you want me to have or something you want me to learn before you'll let me do that? I can almost guarantee you the answer is going to be yes. Go have that experience and then come back and see if you can go into the past life and meet your mom. The answer is always going to be yes, because there's just something that has to come before it to prepare you, to get you ready, because otherwise it would disrupt the learning. Hopefully that makes sense. Thanks for asking. Great question, by the way. Here is, it's already done subs. Sydney Morales, do affirmations. Why am I so connected? Why am I so intuitive like that? It's a very interesting idea. Thank you for suggesting that. SJ says, I was once told my now and here son was his current dad's grandfather, working together on the railroad someplace in the USA in the 1800s. That is certainly possible. I think we tend to travel from lifetime to lifetime and experience time between lives as little groups, as packs. And if you've ever read Dr. Michael Newton's books, he was the expert on the life between lives, on this sort of soul architecture. And like a troupe of actors doing repertory theater, we tend, as I said, to go in these groups and then, like actors, change roles in different lifetimes. So that's super consistent with what you said you were told. I can't tell you whether it was true or not, but it's certainly consistent with my understanding and my experience. So thanks, SJ. Yeah, I would say you're correct, SJ. How many past lives isn't really the case. It's about the lessons learned with the aim of getting back to source. I happen to believe that. I can't prove that to you, but I believe, yes, that we turned away from source at some point because we, like a rebellious kid, and kids are rebellious, that's what they do, thought that we could do it better. And we kind of lost awareness in the process. And so it's almost like we're relearning what we once knew as perfectly radiant beings. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Oh, that's nice. Raquel Figueroa is saying, please, familia, don't forget to like this video. Certainly appreciate that, Raquel. Sydney Morales says, I believe that as we heal in the current lifetime, that you have consciousness of now. The healing here simultaneously heals in all soul lives, experienced little by little. Yeah, I would say, yeah, absolutely. And when you go into a past lifetime and you heal something there, it heals some aspect of your present life. And it heals the other people who were involved in whatever that trauma was, whatever the side of the fence they were on. And when you heal in this lifetime, you affect the people around you in really positive ways. It's that throwing the pebble into a still pond. The ripples go in all directions and affect every bank along the perimeter of that pond. So yeah, completely agree with you, Sydney. Yeah, Rio 7 is calling attention to a great book about past lifetimes. This is how many people became aware of the concept of past lives. Dr. Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters. And he came to it, he says, basically by accident. He had a client who he'd been working with for a couple of years who resisted everything he tried. And so he had some kind of introduction, some kind of instruction in doing hypnosis. And so he thought, I'm going to put her in hypnosis, see what happens. Like he had literally run out of options. And she spontaneously went into a past lifetime in ancient Greece. And by going into this past lifetime, he said that immediately so many of the things that had been resistant to years of therapy suddenly changed for the better. And he was hooked at that moment. Here is Leela. Glad you're here. Very glad you're here. So Sydney is saying, this is why I'm having trouble fixing the connection with my mother, because she refuses to acknowledge our broken connection. So the first thing I would look for with a relationship issue is karma. Use a pendulum. I've got a video here on my channel that teaches you how to use a pendulum. Use the pendulum and ask, do I share karma? Am I working through karma in this lifetime? If the answer to that question is yes, ask him, do I share karma with my mother? If the answer to that is yes, then ask, did I harm her in a past lifetime? Did she harm me in a past lifetime? If either one of those are true, then it's important to go into that past lifetime and repair whatever the harm was. If you were harmed, it's forgive her for harming you so that you release your connection to the karma. If she harmed you, then give her an opportunity to apologize. Then forgive her for what she did. Release the karma. When you do this, it's very likely that your relationship with her now will actually transform. You may not be best buds, but you might find a lot less tension and stress in that relationship if you do what I'm suggesting. So if you do it, let us know. Thank you. Okay. Here is DET, debt. Karenda. Price, pronouncing that wrong. Sorry if I am. How are all of these past lives authenticated and verified? How do you vet it to be actually a real past existence or previous incarnation? Okay, so this is a very interesting question. Somebody just posted something on a recent video that I made about spirit attachments. You cannot apply. Well, you can, and we'll talk about that. But I'm going to say the rules, if you will, of science do not transfer to everything. So how would you go into a church and expect the minister to prove, using science, prove the existence of God? How would you personally prove that you love your child, that you love your husband, you love your wife, you love your mother, you love your son, you love your daughter? How would you be able to prove that you love? And how much do you love? Like, you can't take something so fundamental to us as love and put it into science and say, now I'm going to weigh it, now I'm going to measure it, and now I'm going to prove to you that I love you. I mean, when people say, I love you because I brought you roses on your birthday, I love you because I took you out to dinner, I love you because I've taken your ship for 25 years, that's not proof, right? So if you wanted to, and some people have done this, how would you prove the existence of past lives? Well, you can have a 4-year-old child. Just look up the movie Soul, or the book Soul, Soul, Soul Survivor. And these parents talk about their child. This is very common. And the child is explaining a lifetime of being a fighter pilot in World War II in the Pacific Theater. They get to talking to this kid more, and he's drawing pictures of all of the stuff. And he says he flew this kind of plane. I think it was an F-4 Corsair. Don't quote me on that. I might be slightly wrong. He flew off a very small aircraft carrier, and they had scores of those. They didn't have as many of the big ones, but they had scores of the little ones called the Natoma Bay. This little kid knew the name Natoma Bay of this. He knew his name in that lifetime. So his name in this lifetime was James Leiniger, and in that lifetime it was James something else. And he always would sign the pictures that he drew of this battle, James the Third. And it turned out that this other James that was killed in this battle was James Jr., so it would make him James the Third. He came up with the name of his sister. He came up with what he liked to do. He came up with all of these details, including the name of his wingman. Everything checked out. This is a little kid, didn't have access to this information. And it was obscure information to begin with. So you could say that's a kind of proof, but again, would science accept that? Probably not. But how else would you explain that? He met with the person who was his sister in the past lifetime. Now she's an old lady. She's like in her 80s or something at the time. This is going back maybe 10 or 15 years. And the sister was so convinced of what this little boy was telling her about their life together as little children growing up, that she gave him all of her brother's personal effects after he was killed in this battle in World War II. And this is not the only story. There's story after story after story after story after story that have been made public. There are tens of thousands of stories that are private. So, is that proof? Probably not. But again, applying the laws and the rules of science to certain things, to me, makes perfect sense. To apply them to other things, I think you're talking apples and oranges. For me, the experience is going into a past life myself, feeling what I felt in that past life, noticing how it changes my present life. It's witnessing all of these clients over the last 16 years having these remarkable experiences. For example, I've used this example before where a recent past life I did, I'm talking maybe a year and a half ago. Go into the past lifetime. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but at one point in this past lifetime, I encounter 4 children dressed in kind of like these little nightgowns and a woman. I don't recognize any of them. In other words, the children don't look like my children now. The woman doesn't look like my wife. I don't know them from Adam. But the instant thing that happens when I encounter them is I burst into tears. And I'm not a person who just bursts into tears all the time, because part of me remembered who they are. Part of me remembered why there was so much sadness. So is that proof? Is that something that a scientist would accept? Absolutely not. But I believe that there are different rules, if you will, different criteria that are, or should be, applied to how much do you love your nearest and dearest? You know, the existence of God, past lifetimes, your spirit guide. And I hope that makes sense. It's an excellent question, and I hope that makes sense. So thank you for asking. Mama's Healthy Adventures. Welcome, and congratulations to you. I want to give you a round of applause. Way to go, Stephanie. Way to go is all I can say. And then here's Det Karanda, just to follow up. Good life, long life to all. Thanks. And thanks to you too. Here is Nervisa, 1939. I have had all my life with the same nightmare to the point of being afraid to go to sleep at night. Okay. So there's a really important reason why you're having this nightmare. The most common reason for having the nightmare is that your subconscious mind or your higher self or your spirit guides or your spirit is trying to get your attention. It's trying to get you to resolve something that happened in what we call the past, to heal it or to fix it. In fact, that's what I would say in an earlier Live at 5 I did it on pain. I think it was last week. The purpose of pain is to call your attention to something. So a nightmare is a kind of form of pain. And it's trying to call your attention to something in the past that still is unresolved, that still needs to be healed. So I've worked with many, many, many people who've had chronic nightmares. And after we resolve what needs to be resolved, nightmares are gone. Gone. They don't have them anymore. That's one possibility. The second possibility is that you have some kind of spiritual entity or entities, plural, that is attached to you, energetically. And the entities are creating this nightmare for some reason. Maybe it's their nightmare. I don't know. But that's something that you could certainly investigate on your own, or you could work with me, whatever you want, and resolve that. So a couple of weeks ago, I made a video on spiritual entity attachments. And I've got a couple, I started dabbling in YouTube shorts. These have to be under 1 minute, and the frame isn't horizontal, the frame is vertical. That's how you know it's a short. It's going to be less than 1 minute. And I made 2 shorts on spiritual entity attachments, and they both link back to the video I made a few weeks ago on what is a spiritual entity attachment, how can you test and determine if you have one or more attached to you, and then leading you through the process of removing them. So that's the other possibility here. So I'd encourage you to watch that longer video. It's like 22 minutes, I think it is, and use a pendulum. That you're taught how to use that to see if you have any of these entities attached to you. And if you do, go through the third part of the video, which will help you remove those entities, because that alone may stop the nightmares. If it doesn't, it means there's something probably in a past life, could be earlier in this life, that your subconscious is trying to bring your attention to that needs to get resolved. So I hope that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, you can feel free to ask a follow-up. If I can't get to the follow-up today, feel free to send me an email, peter@blueskyhypnosis.com. And you can go to my website. All the contact information is there, blueskyhypnosis.com. All right, thanks for sharing that, Nervisa. Here's Leela says, my post keeps vanishing. I don't know why. I see people in interdimensional lives other than this one. I became a hypnotist. Your high-rise example was great. Looks like it vanished, whatever the ending to that was. Doggone it. So I see people in interdimensional lives other than this one. All right, so it sounds like you have a gift, excuse me, and you're able to access through a deeper sense things that the rest of us can't just see all the time. The next question, and you became a hypnotist, which is awesome, would be, why do you have this ability? What is this tool, if you will? Why did you take on this tool? For what purpose is it to be used? The first thing that comes to my mind, I'm not saying this is what it is, but the first thing that comes to my mind is, are there beings who are sort of trapped between dimensions? Now, to me, the most prosaic example of that would be, as a person dies in this life, their body goes this way, their soul goes this way, it doesn't go to the light, it stays on this plane, and it's kind of trapped here. That's kind of an interdimensional being, and I know that there are some people who are really good at helping those beings go to the light, because they can see these beings, they can communicate with them. You may be talking about something entirely different, but bottom line is, I would suggest it's probably important to figure out why you have this capability, and then, perhaps choosing to employ that capability for whatever purpose it was designed for. So thank you for that. And SJ says, thank you, Peter. You have totally confirmed to me what I have been taught by an old friend who is a spiritualist. Well, that's super cool. I'm glad for that. All right. Before I handle one or two more questions, I just want to talk about next week. Taking next week off. I'm going to be traveling. So the next time we convene is going to be on Friday the 26th. And I guess before I jump to that, I probably should cover a couple things that I had in my promo. We talked about, is past life regression real? So there was that really good question by DET. So I think we've covered that. How to use time concepts to heal. Well, we talked about quantum field, and about how there's no time, and about how if you heal something in the past, you actually heal it in the present. And in this way, you kind of change the timeline a little bit. You might not change the activities that occurred, but how you interact with those. Going from, say, a victim to a creator, or going from, have a murderous rage to being in a state of forgiveness. So we've talked about, how past life regression can heal lives. Use those two examples of the migraine headaches and how we were able to do that. Is there any danger to past life regression? No. The bottom line is no. I've never seen any harm that comes of this. Can it be scary going into a past lifetime where some kind of trauma occurred? Yes, and it usually is. But that's not dangerous as you work your way through and beyond it. And then the next thing is, not next Friday, but the Friday after, we'll be doing a session on Friday the 26th. And maybe I'll make that one the dream interpretation, the dream analysis, because it seems like there's some interest there. All right, let's take one or two more before we close it up. Let's see here. So here's Vergs. Vergs says, that's a cute dog. Wow, very cute. I can't seem to ever go into a past life. Am I a new life? Is that a thing? Some people think it is. For me, it's not. No, for me, it's not. Like I believe that we have always been, right? And that we have come here many times before. What could block you from going into a past lifetime is kind of three things. One is disbelief. So even if you consciously believe this is possible, you can have a subconscious disbelief. Second, and most common thing, is fear. Back to that concept of the subconscious mind knows something nasty, something painful, something scary, traumatic happened in the past, and it's trying to protect you from that, so it's suppressing it. But what I said before is that if you keep something toxic inside of you, it's going to affect you in really nasty ways. So if either one of those is the case, this is going to sound ludicrously simple, and it is. It took me a long time to learn it. You just repeat to yourself 3 times in your mind, I hereby suspend all my fear and all my disbelief for the next 60 minutes. You say that 3 times, and then you do it, and it opens up for you almost all the time, which is remarkable. You can also use a pendulum and ask the pendulum, is it disbelief that's preventing me from experiencing this past lifetime? Is it fear? Or, third possibility, are there entities attached that are preventing me, from going into a past lifetime? If that's the case, you would want to clear out those entities. And I talked about that video that I launched a couple of weeks ago that helps you do that. That builds upon 2 videos that I released 3 or 4 years ago. And this is just kind of an updated version of it that does it in a very succinct way and kind of takes you through the whole thing. If you're an absolute beginner, if you already know you have entities attached, you can go right to the end. If you already know the background, you can go right to the part where you use a pendulum and determine if that's the case. So that's something else that you could look for. But hopefully that quick description, explanation helps you. Thanks for asking. Okay, that's pretty cool. Where do hard French fries come from? Ancient Greece. Very cool. We all need humor now more than ever. Okay. So this is an answer to debt. I was actually able to track down military records via spontaneous memories. So this is the other way, Det, that people can prove that they lived in a past lifetime. Again, that proof probably wouldn't be accepted by science. But if you go into a past lifetime and you learn that your name was Ralph Jones and that you were born in 1841 and that you were killed in a barroom brawl in 1869 in Laramie, Wyoming, in a saloon called blah, 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 and you're able to find records that validate the existence of Ralph Jones, when he was born, when he died, how he died, and other circumstances surrounding his death, kind of like that kid in Soul Survivor. That, for many people, is proof positive that this happened, but again, for kind of conventional scientists, they probably would not accept that. So thank you for that, Mary. That's really cool. Actually, was that? Yeah, it was Mary. And yeah, she's saying, I'd love to go to Europe one day and try to find the wreckage of my plane. That's awesome. So it sounds like she was a pilot in the military and was shot down or crashed or something. Yeah, it says here, I was a pilot in World War II previously, but in Europe. And she's saying that she found the military records for that pilot, the name and maybe even the circumstances of his death. And this does happen quite frequently, actually. Miriam is saying, yes, I agree. When I was in the past life regression, my feelings were super intense, and I thought afterwards, it doesn't matter whether I can prove this or not, but it is real as my feelings are real. I would have to agree with that 100%. And my opinion is that the emotions don't lie. Like that example that I gave you guys, that when I did a past life regression and encountered those 4 children and the woman, the racking sobs came up instantly, even though consciously I have no conception of who these people are, and would otherwise have no reason to burst into tears upon the sight of them, because there are other people that come up in past lifetimes that there's no emotion with them. So anyway, thank you all so much for participating today. Today's been a really fun and exciting Friday Live at 5 for me. I hope it has been for you too. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, BlueSky Hypnosis on YouTube. Feel free to use a lot of the content there for whatever you may be dealing with. And if you want to try to experience a past lifetime, I've got a couple of tracks, past life for beginners, that you can try out. I've also got tracks to meet your spirit guide. I've got tracks to check and see if you have any spiritual entities attached, as well as other things like weight loss and relaxing and sleeping better and manifesting money and that sort of thing. So feel free to use all the content on the tracks. And I'll look forward to seeing you, not next Friday, but the week after, the 26th. And I think what we're going to be doing then is the one on dream interpretation, dream analysis. So look forward to seeing you then. Have an awesome weekend. Thank you again for all of your questions, comments, and especially for your support. Take care. Goodbye.